Long before the word Persia carried weight, the world was already crowded with ambition. Along the Nile, Egypt was rising in stone and sun. Between the Tigris and Euphrates, Mesopotamian cities carved laws into clay. To the west, the Aegean shimmered with restless sailors and half-formed myths. To the north, warlike kingdoms tested iron on human flesh. Everywhere, power was loud, crowns were heavy, blood was the price of memory. Yet east of all this noise, on the Iranian plateau, the land breathed differently. Wide skies hung over wind-cut plains. Mountains folded into one another like ancient backs. Rivers carved slow paths through dust and grass. Life here was harder, quieter, and more patient. Tribes moved with their animals. Fires burned at night. Stories were passed mouth to ear instead of etched in stone. There was no empire here yet, only people learning how to endure. They herded sheep. They rode horses. They followed the seasons. Their leaders were chosen not by divine decree, but by trust, by who could protect the group, who could see farther than the next winter. Survival was not guaranteed. It was earned daily. And somewhere within this quiet, a dangerous idea began to form. Not a weapon, not a wall, an idea. A vision of the universe that didn't revolve around endlessly feuding gods, but around choice. Light and darkness, truth and lies, order and chaos. The belief that every human decision tilted the scales of the world just a little. This idea would later be tied to a name, Zoroaster. But for now, it lived as a whisper on the wind, carried by fire keepers and wandering teachers. Fire became sacred, not because it destroyed, but because it revealed. In flame, you could see clearly. In light, you could not lie to yourself. This was revolutionary. Until now, most people believed the universe was a playground for unpredictable gods. Storms came because gods quarreled. Plagues came because gods were bored or offended. Human beings were small pieces on an enormous divine game board. But here, in these highlands, a new thought took root, that the universe had moral structure. That truth mattered, that good and evil were not moods of the gods, but paths chosen by human beings. Civilizations usually rise around rivers. This one began around fire. At the same time, far beyond these quiet plains, empires were beginning their long work of domination. The Assyrians built cities with walls like cliffs and armies that erased resistance with terror. Their kings made monuments from the skins of their enemies. They believed fear was stability. Babylon refined law and luxury. Its priests mapped the stars. Its merchants turned distance into wealth. Its walls declared permanence. Egypt ruled through ritual and eternity, embalming even time itself. These powers looked eternal. They were not. And the people on the Iranian plateau watched all of it from a distance. They traded, they traveled, they learned. They learned what worked. They learned what failed. Most of all, they learned this: terror could conquer, but it could not unite. Meanwhile, the tribes themselves were changing. Riders learned to strike fast and vanish into distance. Trade routes stitched together valleys that once felt isolated. Languages brushed against each other and blended. Clans grew into confederations. The seeds of a people were forming. Still no crown, still no empire. But history was quietly pulling breath. Because somewhere within this shifting world, destiny had already chosen a single thread to pull. Far away in the lands of the Medes, relatives and rivals to the early Persians, a king dreamed of his own downfall. He dreamed of a child who would rise from his blood and take everything from him. Like so many rulers before him, he believed murder could silence fate. But fate is patient. The child was born, the order was given, and the child was spared. Raised not among kings, but among shepherds, hidden from power, hidden from prophecy, hidden from the world. For now, while the great empires of the age carved their stories into stone and sky, the most important story of the ancient world slipped quietly into human hands, wrapped not in gold, but in wool and dust. The fires kept burning, the stars kept watching, and time moved, as it always does, toward transformation. Cyrus grows up believing he is ordinary. No palace walls, no tutors in silk robes. No one bows when he enters a room. He learns to herd animals, to ride hard, to listen to the land. He learns how hunger feels and how cold settles into the bones at night. He learns how people argue, how they forgive, how they follow strength even when it has no crown. And without realizing it, he learns how to lead. When other boys play games, Cyrus doesn't just compete, he organizes. When disputes break out, he doesn't strike first. He decides. People begin to listen to him, not because they are told to, but because something about him feels steady, grounded, inevitable. Then the truth surfaces. The shepherd is not his father. The woman who raised him did not give him birth. His bloodline leads backward into royalty and forward into danger. The Median king, who once tried to erase him, now stands face to face with the grown version of his worst dream. And in that moment, history tilts, because the king does not kill him. Instead, Cyrus is brought into the royal court, and what the king thinks will domesticate the boy instead sharpens him. Cyrus studies how power works from the inside. He watches how loyalty is bought, how fear is weaponized, how arrogance blinds rulers to the small things that grow into disasters. He studies not as a student, but as a future rival measuring the room. Then the waiting ends. The Persians rise under Cyrus's command, not as a rebellion fueled by rage, but as a movement fueled by belief. Tribe after tribe joins him, not because he promises them riches, but because he treats them as partners instead of tools. This is new. Kings do not speak this way to their soldiers, but Cyrus does. The Medes fall not in a single dramatic battle, but as loyalty drains out of them and flows toward him. One army refuses to fight. Another switches sides mid-campaign. The Median Empire collapses into Cyrus's hands almost gently, and with that, the Persian Empire is born. But Cyrus doesn't stop. He turns west toward Lydia, a kingdom so wealthy its rivers carry gold dust in their currents. Their king believes money can solve every problem. He learns too late that belief cannot be bought. Cyrus defeats him. Then the world begins to understand something terrifying. This is not a regional rebellion. This is a force of nature. Then comes Babylon, the impossible city. Its walls are legendary. Its priests read the future in stars. Its kings believe themselves chosen by eternity. Every road leads to Babylon. Every traitor passes through its gates. It is the beating heart of the ancient world. Cyrus does not break the gates. He breaks the river. By diverting the Euphrates, he lowers the water level just enough for his soldiers to walk beneath the walls at night. While Babylon celebrates a festival, convinced no enemy could ever breach its defenses, the Persian army enters the city in silence. No screams, no great burning, no massacre. Babylon falls, peacefully. And then something unprecedented happens. Cyrus does not punish the city. He frees prisoners. He restores temples. He sends conquered people back to their homelands. Slaves walk free. Priests return to shrines. Families go home. For the first time in recorded history, conquest does not mean cultural erasure. It means inclusion. This moment will echo for thousands of years. The edict Cyrus issues, carved into a clay cylinder, speaks of freedom of worship, of dignity, of the right to live without forced belief. Long before the concept of human rights has a name, Cyrus gives it practice. The empire stretches now from the Aegean Sea to the edges of India. Roads form like veins. Messengers ride faster than any ruler before him could imagine. Cultures mix. Trade explodes. Ideas travel. Persia becomes not just an empire of land, but an empire of connection. Cyrus stands at the center of the largest realm the world has ever seen, and yet he does not declare himself a god. He does not demand worship. He calls himself a servant of order. Fire remains sacred. Truth remains law. But even the greatest king cannot outrun the limits of time. On a distant battlefield, far from the palaces he built, Cyrus falls in war. The exact details blur into legend, but the result does not. The empire does not collapse. It passes to his son, and history holds its breath, because the son of a builder rarely carries the same hands. Cambyses, the son of Cyrus, does not grow up in exile or among shepherds. He grows up surrounded by silk, strategy, and the quiet terror of expectation. He inherits the largest empire the world has ever seen, and with it, the unbearable pressure to prove himself worthy of it. Where Cyrus expanded by winning loyalty, Cambyses expands by demanding submission. His eyes turn south, to Egypt. Egypt is ancient even by ancient standards. Its pyramids were already old when Babylon was young. Its priests claim knowledge older than kings. Its Nile floods like a heartbeat that the entire civilization depends on. Egypt does not bow easily to outsiders. Cambyses invades anyway. The Persian army crosses deserts that kill unprepared men in days. Heat crushes lungs. Sand devours supplies. Yet the machine of empire keeps moving. At the Battle of Pelusium, Persian forces exploit Egyptian religious devotion, using animals considered sacred as shields. Egyptian soldiers hesitate, and hesitation in war is death. Memphis falls. The temples fall. The pharaoh falls. Egypt becomes another crown jewel in the Persian imperial chain. But conquest does not quiet Cambyses. It awakens something unstable inside him. In Egypt, his rule grows erratic. Some records say he desecrates sacred animals. Others say he mocks the old gods. Some say he murders his own brother out of paranoia. The truth is tangled in rumor and propaganda, but one thing becomes undeniable. The spirit of Cyrus is fading from the throne. Cambyses no longer rules as a unifier. He rules as a conqueror who fears being replaced. Then comes the lie that shakes the empire. While Cambyses campaigns far from home, a man rises in Persia, claiming to be his brother, the very brother Cambyses may have already killed. Many believe the impostor. Others don't care. They only know that the empire is being ruled by uncertainty. Cambyses turns back toward Persia. He never reaches it. On the journey home, he is wounded. Some say by accident. Some say by fate. Some say by his own hand. The wound becomes infected. The king dies without securing his legacy. And just like that, the empire of order created by Cyrus is thrown back into chaos. Power fractures. Rebellions ignite. Provincial governors test their strength. The world senses what it always senses when a titan stumbles: opportunity. Across the empire, whispers spread. Persia may fall. Once again, fate prepares to choose another keeper of the fire. Darius does not arrive as destiny's favorite son. He is not the heir. He is not the most loved. He is not even supposed to be king. He is a noble, a soldier, a man who understands systems better than myths. He watches the empire tear itself apart under impostors and weak claims, and he realizes something simple and terrifying. If no one takes control, Persia will dissolve into memory. So he acts. With a small group of allies, Darius overthrows the false king. Blood is spilled quickly, decisively. There is no poetry in how it happens. Only necessity. Only survival. When the dust settles, the throne belongs to a man who did not inherit it, but seized it from the edge of collapse. Yet Darius understands something Cyrus's enemies never did. Conquering land is easy. Holding it is the true war. The empire he inherits is massive but unstable. Rebellions flare across Media, Babylon, Egypt, and the eastern provinces. The idea of Persian invincibility, so carefully crafted under Cyrus, is now fragile. Darius rides out into the storm. One by one, he crushes uprisings. Cities fall. Leaders are executed, not out of cruelty, but out of calculation. Order must be restored before mercy can have meaning again. Victory hardens him. The crown settles on his head, not as a symbol of divine favor, but as a covenant between ruler and reality. Once the fires of rebellion are extinguished, Darius begins something no conqueror before him fully achieved. He builds a system. The empire is divided into provinces called satrapies. Each has a governor, a military commander, and a tax officer, none of whom answer to each other directly. Power is balanced like a scale that can never tilt too far in one direction. Taxes become predictable. Laws become recorded. Trade becomes protected. Roads stretch across thousands of miles, guarded and maintained. Messages that once took months now travel in days. The royal road becomes the nervous system of the ancient world, pulsing with orders, gold, information, and fear. And above all of it stands the king. Not a god, not a tyrant, a manager of civilization itself. Darius standardizes currency. He mints gold coins that can be trusted anywhere within the empire. Merchants no longer gamble with every exchange. Wealth begins to flow like water through stable channels. He commissions inscriptions in stone to tell his story, not as a boast, but as a warning. On cliffs and mountainsides, his victories are carved into the earth, so even time itself must remember who restored order when the world threatened to fracture. Yet beneath all this structure, the old Persian spirit still burns. Fire remains sacred. Truth remains law. Darius does not claim divinity, but he claims the responsibility of cosmic balance. His rule is not only political, it is moral. And under his reign, Persia reaches a level of organization never before seen on Earth. But the West does not sleep. Across the Aegean, the Greek city-states watch the eastern horizon with suspicion. Persia is not just a neighboring power now, it is an existential reality. Their colonies in Asia Minor fall under Persian control, and the tension begins to wind tighter with every passing year. Two civilizations are slowly drifting toward collision, one built on kings, roads, and unity, the other built on citizens, debate, and fragile freedom. And collision, when it comes, will not shake only armies. It will shake history itself. On the far western rim of the Persian world, where Asia leans toward Europe, the Greek city-states live tightly packed along the coast of Asia Minor. Cities like Miletus, Ephesus, and Sardis trade constantly, argue endlessly, and guard their independence like oxygen. They now belong to Persia. At first, the arrangement works. Persia allows them to keep their customs, their gods, even their councils. In return, they pay tribute and accept Persian governors. It is the same deal countless peoples across the empire have accepted. But Greeks are different. They are loud with opinion, addicted to debate, uncomfortable under invisible ceilings, and slowly, irritation hardens into resentment. By 499 BCE, that resentment ignites into open rebellion. Greek cities rise together in what becomes known as the Ionian Revolt. They burn the Persian administrative center at Sardis. The flames leap high enough for Darius himself to feel insulted from hundreds of miles away. Persia responds the only way empires ever do, with consequence. The revolt is crushed. Miletus is destroyed. Its people are scattered. And Darius makes himself a promise that will echo for decades. The Greeks across the sea will pay. From this moment on, Greece is no longer a collection of distant trading partners. It is a target. Persian forces test the edges of Europe. They probe Thrace. They subdue Macedonia. The empire's shadow stretches farther than ever before. Many Greek city-states submit quietly. They send earth and water, the ancient symbols of surrender. But two cities refuse, Athens and Sparta. Two places that could not be more different. And yet, in this moment, stand together in defiance. Athens is loud with ideas. Its streets buzz with debate. Power flows from citizens upward, not from kings downward. It is chaotic, brilliant, impossible to fully control. Sparta is silent, sharpened into discipline. Boys are trained for war from childhood. Speech is trimmed to the bone. Weakness is not tolerated. Neither city believes Persia can truly reach them. Both are wrong. In 490 BCE, Darius sends a massive expedition across the Aegean. The Persian fleet lands on the plains of Marathon, just outside Athens. The Persian army is larger, better supplied, backed by the wealth of half the world. Athens stands with just its citizen soldiers, farmers, potters, men who vote by day and fight by emergency. Sparta is delayed. For a moment, it seems the story will end here. Then something extraordinary happens. Instead of waiting to be surrounded, the Athenians charge. They sprint across open ground into an army that outnumbers them, trusting momentum, shock, and sheer refusal to lose. Against all probability, they win. The Persian army withdraws. The idea of Persian invincibility breaks for the first time. A small city has stood against the greatest empire on earth and lived. Darius does not see the full consequences of Marathon. He dies while preparing an even greater invasion. But his son will not forget the humiliation. The torch passes again, this time into hands driven not by order, but by vengeance. Xerxes inherits more than a throne. He inherits humiliation. The memory of Marathon hangs over Persia like an unfinished sentence. To the east, the empire is vast and obedient. To the west, a cluster of stubborn cities has dared to say no and survived. For an empire built on order, that defiance is an infection. Xerxes does not plan a punishment. He plans an ending. For years, the empire moves with one purpose. Ships are built across Phoenicia and Egypt. Bridges of boats are chained across the Hellespont, so the army can literally walk from Asia into Europe. Storehouses rise along the invasion route, stocked for a campaign so massive it seems to bend the future toward itself. When Xerxes finally marches, the earth trembles. Men from every corner of the known world move under Persian banners. Archers from the east, horsemen from the plains, engineers from the great river cities. The army swallows distances that once took explorers a lifetime. The Greeks hear the rumors. They hear numbers so large they sound like myth. They look around and realize something terrifying. This time, the empire is not testing them. It is coming to erase them. Some cities immediately surrender. Others argue. A few prepare to die. Sparta chooses resistance. So does Athens. And for the first time, Greek disunity bends into something like unity. Old rivalries pause. Messengers race across mountains and seas. Plans are made not for dominance, but for survival. The first wall Europe raises against Persia is not stone. It is a narrow pass called Thermopylae, a place where mountains squeeze the road so tightly that numbers lose their advantage. King Leonidas of Sparta stands there with 300 warriors and several thousand allies, knowing fully that defeat is certain, but delay is priceless. For days, they hold. Wave after wave of Persian troops breaks against Greek shields. Arrows darken the sky. Spears splinter. Bodies stack in the dust. The pass becomes a choke point of death, but betrayal breaks the spell. A hidden mountain trail is revealed. Persia flows around the choke point like water finding a crack. Leonidas sends most of his allies away. The Spartans remain. They fight until none of them stand. And with their fall, Greece is opened. Athens empties its people and abandons its city. Persian troops march into quiet streets. The Acropolis burns. Temples collapse. Smoke writes Persia's victory into the sky. It looks like the end. But Greece is not finished. At sea, where Persia has always been less certain, the Greeks make their stand. In the narrow straits of Salamis, their smaller, faster ships draw the Persian fleet into tight waters where size becomes weakness. Oars shatter, hulls collide, waves clog with wreckage. By the end of the day, the Persian navy is broken. Xerxes watches from a cliff as his sea power disintegrates in real time. The campaign that was meant to erase Greece stalls. The following year, at Plataea, Greek forces shatter what remains of the great invasion army. Persia retreats, not destroyed, but wounded in a way that cannot be explained away. For the first time, the empire meets a limit it cannot simply march through. Xerxes returns home in silence. The man who left as the ruler of the world returns as a king who learned that the world pushes back. And slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, something changes inside the Persian heart. The age of expansion ends. The age of maintenance begins. Persia does not fall after Xerxes returns. That's the strange part. The roads still run. The taxes still flow. The fires still burn. From the outside, the empire looks unchanged, vast, wealthy, impossibly powerful. But inside the royal courts, something has shifted. The confidence that once moved mountains now hesitates. The certainty that once stitched nations together frays at the edges. Xerxes never truly recovers from Greece. He builds palaces instead of campaigns. Gold floods into architecture, ornament, and excess. The court grows thick with intrigue. Eunuchs whisper. Nobles posture. Guards listen to the wrong people. The king who once ordered continents now trusts fewer and fewer faces. Until one night, trust fails completely. Xerxes is assassinated in his own palace. No rebellion. No heroic last stand. Just a quiet end beneath familiar ceilings. The throne passes to his son, Artaxerxes the Perverse, a ruler of calmer temperament, but inheriting a poisoned atmosphere. He keeps the empire together, but no longer expands it. Persia still frightens the world, but it no longer inspires it. And this is how great powers truly begin to die. Not with invasion, with stagnation. Generation after generation, kings rise and fall inside sealed walls. Some are competent, some cruel, some lost to luxury. The empire survives them all, But each reign loosens the structure just a little more. Satraps grow powerful and disloyal. Provincial rebellions become routine. Egypt breaks away, is reconquered, breaks away again. Greek mercenaries flood Persian armies, men whose loyalty belongs only to silver. The king becomes less a master of the system and more a prisoner of it. Assassinations become common. Brothers poison brothers. Sons overthrow fathers. The royal bloodline turns inward and brittle. Persia still looks eternal from a distance, but up close, it is tired. Across the western horizon, Greece itself is changing. The city-states that once united against Persia now turn on each other. Athens and Sparta tear Greece apart in endless war. Out of that exhaustion rises a new power to the north, Macedon. And Macedon is different. It does not argue like Athens. It does not wait like Sparta. It trains. Under King Philip II, the Macedonian army becomes a machine of precision and brutal speed. Long spears, disciplined formations, relentless drilling. Greece falls to this new force not with a roar, but with a lesson in efficiency. And when Philip is assassinated, the fire passes to his son, a young man with a storm behind his eyes. His name will become harder to forget than any Persian king who came before him, Alexander. Persia hears of him as rumor at first, then as threat, then as destiny approaching at full speed. By the time the Persian court takes him seriously, he is already moving. Alexander is barely a man when he inherits the Macedonian throne, but war already lives in his bones. He has been trained by generals and taught by philosophers. He has learned how to fight and how to think about fighting. Where Persian kings rule through layers of bureaucracy, Alexander rules through speed, proximity, and absolute certainty. When he crosses into Asia, Persia still believes its size alone will protect it. It is a fatal miscalculation. The first clash comes at the Granicus River. Persian satraps underestimate the young king. They see a reckless invader. What they meet instead is a storm of discipline and momentum. Alexander charges directly into the heart of their command. The Persians break. For the first time in nearly 2 centuries, a foreign army cuts cleanly through Persian defenses. Still, the empire does not panic. One defeat can be explained. Darius III, the reigning Persian king, gathers a force worthy of legend. At Issus, the two worlds collide. Persian numbers stretch to the horizon. Alexander's army is outmatched in size, supply, and terrain. But Alexander does not fight wars the way Persia expects wars to be fought. He strikes directly at Darius himself. The Persian king turns. And when the king turns, the empire turns with him. Darius flees the field. His army collapses in confusion. The myth of Persian invincibility, already cracked by the Greeks, shatters completely. Alexander does not behave like a traditional conqueror. He does not burn everything he takes. He adopts Persian dress, Persian customs, Persian ways of rule. He marries into Persian nobility. To some of his men, it feels like betrayal. To Alexander, it feels like destiny. He does not want to destroy Persia. He wants to become it. City after city submits. Palaces fall. Treasuries fill Macedonian wagons with the wealth of centuries. Yet the chase is not over. Darius is still alive. The king flees eastward, deeper into the vastness of his own empire. He hopes distance will do what armies could not. He is wrong. Before Alexander can reach him, Darius is betrayed by his own men, stabbed and left to die in the dust by a satrap who believes he can negotiate with the unstoppable force closing in. Alexander arrives too late to save him, and too early to forgive. He orders Darius buried with royal honors. The last king of Persia leaves the world wrapped in the dignity his empire no longer possessed. With Darius dead, resistance becomes scattered. The great capitals fall: Babylon, Susa, Persepolis. The ceremonial heart of Persia is burned, whether as accident, drunken excess, or deliberate symbol. No one can say for certain. What is certain is this: the age of Persian world rule ends in flame. Alexander pushes farther east, chasing not enemies, but the edge of the known world. His army grows restless. Years of unbroken campaigning grind down even the most loyal. At the edge of India, they finally refuse him. For the first time in his life, Alexander is forced to turn back. He never reaches old age. In Babylon, the same city once taken peacefully by Cyrus, Alexander falls ill and dies suddenly. The shock echoes across continents. His empire fractures almost instantly, split among generals who cannot wear his shadow without being crushed by it. Persia, as it once was, is gone. But Persia, as an idea, is not finished. When Alexander dies, the world exhales in confusion. There is no heir strong enough to command what he conquered. His generals carve the empire into pieces like men cutting cloth they do not fully understand. Wars erupt between former allies. Cities change hands. Borders blur and harden and blur again. Persia, once the center of the world, becomes a prize passed between foreign kings. But something remarkable happens beneath the noise of new banners. The Persian way of ruling survives. The Greeks, who now call themselves kings in Persian lands, quickly realize they cannot govern without the old systems. They keep the satrapies. They keep the tax networks. They keep the roads. They adopt Persian court rituals. They rely on Persian administrators. The conquerors inherit not just territory, but methods. The Seleucid Empire rises from Alexander's eastern territories, Greek in language, but Persian in structure. Temples still burn with sacred fire. Trade routes still pulse. Farmers still time their lives to ancient rhythms older than any invader. Even after conquest, Persia teaches the world how to hold power. Centuries pass. New empires rise on Persian soil. The Parthians ride in from the east, masters of cavalry and distance. They challenge Rome itself and halt its expansion again and again. Later, the Sassanian Persian Empire rises, more centralized, more consciously Persian than anything since Darius. Zoroastrian fire temples glow across the plateau once more. Old symbols return with renewed force. Persia becomes Rome's great equal, not a memory, a rival. For hundreds of years, East and West grind against each other across Mesopotamia, neither able to fully destroy the other. The old rivalry between order and freedom, king and citizen, hierarchy and debate continues in new forms. Then, in the 7th century, another shockwave arrives, this time from the southern deserts. The Islamic conquests sweep across the Middle East with revolutionary speed. The Sassanian Empire collapses after generations of war with Rome. Once again, Persia falls. And once again, Persia endures. The language evolves, but does not disappear. The poems grow richer. The identity reshapes, but does not shatter. Islam takes root, but Persian culture shapes how Islam expresses itself across Central and South Asia. Administrators, poets, scholars, architects, all carry forward the old Persian sense of order, beauty, and memory. Even the very word paradise traces back to Persian gardens, enclosed spaces of water, shade, and symmetry in a harsh world. The fire never truly goes out. It only changes fuel. Empires come and go. Dynasties rise and vanish. Yet Persia remains, as influence, as echo, as inheritance. Look around today. You may not see Cyrus or Darius, Xerxes or Alexander. You may not see burned palaces or satrapies or the royal road stretching for thousands of miles. But the principles that held Persia together ripple through time. Order, first and foremost. Persia showed the world that governing a diverse empire requires more than fear. It requires systems, roads, and trusted communication. Darius's roads still inspire modern infrastructure. His approach to taxation and administration laid foundations for centralized government in empires that followed. Tolerance, too. Cyrus's decree at Babylon, the first recorded charter of human rights, echoes across millennia. Conquered peoples were allowed to practice their own religions. They could return to their homes. They could rebuild. For the first time in history, the world glimpsed a ruler who understood that inclusion strengthens empire more than domination. And culture. Persian art, poetry, and architecture shaped countless societies after it. Miniature painting, monumental reliefs, gardens, and ceremonial spaces all carry a Persian signature. Even ideas of governance, justice, and morality in neighboring civilizations bear traces of this ancient empire. The fire, literal and symbolic, burns on. It symbolizes continuity, enlightenment, and vigilance. Stars still track time above the plateau, where Zoroaster once spoke of choice and truth. Roads and rivers still define the contours of cities. Dust covers ruins, but underneath lie lessons about power, unity, and the human spirit. Persia did not vanish when Alexander arrived. It survived. It adapted. It influenced conquerors, shaped laws, inspired poets, and molded civilizations. And in that survival lies the most profound truth. Empires may crumble, armies may fall, but ideas endure. Structures may rot, but principles can outlive centuries. Persia reminds us that the measure of power is not only in victory, but in legacy. When you trace the threads of human history, administration, tolerance, culture, strategy, you find Persia quietly woven into the tapestry. From governments to literature, from gardens to moral philosophy, Persia whispers its presence.